Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to another episode in the series of what to put in your tank. Now, moving on to this episode, this is kind of like the big step between tanks because this is where your options really start to expand, and we're going to be talking about the 45 cube and the 45 low today. So let's get into this. Now, of course, this isn't going to be a full list of everything you can keep inside these tanks. This is just kind of some of our recommendations, some of our personal favorites, and just kind of giving you an idea of what you can use this spare tank for. So we're going to be starting off with the low because everything you can put in the low you can put in the cube, but not everything you can put in the cube you can put in the low. So we're going to start off with some of the frog species that you can get inside this one right here. Starting off with one of my personal favorites and probably what I'm going to be putting in this tank is the Pac-Man frog. It's a well-known frog throughout the reptile community and it comes in loads of different morphs, and honestly they're just kind of a sit and wait creature, so they're not going to be needing a lot of room. They'll probably dig a little hole in the side of this tank and just kind of bury itself there and wait for food. Similar to the Pac-Man frog, you've got the tomato frog and the false tomato frog, which also we have mentioned before. These would also be a good fit inside this tank and it will be a perfect size for them to grow up. Some of the newer frogs coming into this series is the Asian chubby frog, as you can see right here, which is such a cute frog, and this would be a perfect tank size for that kind of frog. I didn't really know these ones existed until Tom actually showed me these ones. I find them really cool and I think would make a great addition to our collection. Next up is the Madagascar and burrowing frog. As you can see, these guys have an awesome brown and green coloration on their back and they look super cool, almost like the mossy frogs with the kind of texture of their back. Now, and the last of our frog ones, we're going to come in with one that maybe you can use as a temporary housing inside here, but you would definitely need to upgrade it in the future, and that is the giant bullfrog. Now, of course, this thing, when it is smaller and a baby, it will fit inside this tank, but as you guys can see, they get very large in these pictures that I'm throwing up now, so you're definitely going to want to upgrade in the future if you're looking into getting this species. And now we're going to throw a couple toads into the mix. We've got the bumblebee walking toad, which you'll actually be able to keep a couple in here, a nice little group. And these guys are awesome. The yellow and the black on them really makes their colour pop, and I think they would make an awesome selection for inside this tank. Then you've also got your options like your fire belly and your yellow belly toads as well, which would also be a great fit for this. But that kind of is all of the frog and toad species that we're going to recommend for this tank. Now for the low, moving on to invertebrates, there's not a ton that can really go in here. Where you can keep all of your larger scorpions in here quite happily. They're probably going to be the best thing that you can kind of choose in terms of invertebrate. There's not really enough height for stick insects. They're a bit large for mantises with not really enough height, you know. You might be able to keep a community in here, but I feel like the cube might be better on some of those species. But yeah, definitely all of your large scorpions you'll be able to keep in here, and I think they would make an awesome display. As you know, we've got the baby Asian forests which are growing up, which are pretty cool, and you can keep one of your emperor scorpions in here as well. So there's loads of different scorpions to choose from to go inside this tank, and of course you can make it look super cool with the space that you've got available. Now moving on to tarantulas for this, well, you can pretty much keep all your terrestrial tarantulas in here and you've got loads to choose from. As we know on this series, we don't really talk about all the different species of tarantulas, mainly because we don't have a lot of experience with them, but there is tons to choose from for your terrestrial tarantulas, and you'll be able to keep all of them in here very nicely and they'll be able to burrow. Now, of course, this is everything but the bird eater. This will not be big enough for the bird eater. As you can see, this thing is massive. You won't be able to keep this in this tank. So if that's your option, you're going to need a much larger enclosure. Now, moving on to a couple snake options that you could keep inside here. We're probably not going to be keeping snakes in our Exoterras, maybe for a little bit before we upgrade and put them into rackings. But when we look into getting snakes, a couple of options to put in here are the hognose, which is definitely one that I'm personally looking into getting, and the sand boa, which is one that Tom is looking into getting. These would fit perfectly in here nicely, but we wouldn't actually keep them in here. We're going to put them in kind of like a racking system slash wooden vivariums instead. But other than that, you could put them in here and they would make a nice enclosure and they would live their life happily in here. We are now moving on to the kind of geckos. Now, I feel like the cube and the low really thrive with the amount of different gecko species that you can keep in here. Also, the amount of choice that you've got as well. There are tons of different geckos that you can choose from. So we're going to start listing off some of them now. So in here, you'll be able to keep all your Stenodactylus species. Now, of course, we keep ours in the cube, but they don't really need the height. It isn't really needed. You can keep them in low. We've got the jeweled sand geckos. I'll throw up a picture of the ones that actually we keep here at Predator Exotics, but all of your Stenodactylus groups would fit nicely in here, and you can have a nice little community of about 3 to 4. Next up is one that Tom has been searching for a while, and if you ask about a missed opportunity, it is the Viper Gecko. He was offered a couple in the past, and sadly he didn't take up the offer, and now they've really gone up in price recently, especially here in the UK. But Viper geckos are an awesome species to keep in this low. So definitely, if you can find them on like the cheaper side, they are quite expensive here in the UK, at least the ones we've seen, especially buying them in a group. But they would be an awesome selection for this tank. They look awesome, and their patterns along their back are super cool. Here's a couple pictures of what the Viper geckos look like. Now you can also keep some of these smaller Para-Adura species in here as well. This is one we've talked about in the past for some of the other tanks that we have also talked about. But this would be another one where you could keep some of the smaller Para-Adura species, such as the Para-Adura pictus, which would be an awesome selection for this. I know that Tom is a big fan. Tom's really into geckos, especially those kind of ones that like the Viper geckos and the Para-Adura geckos, so I'm sure that we will be seeing them soon in the future added to the Predator Exotics collection. Now, if you're looking for something a bit different than just your average leopard gecko, I'm going to name off a couple other gecko species now that you might not have heard of, but are super cool. So we've got the banded gecko, which would be an awesome addition to this tank. We've got the helmeted gecko, which would also be another cool one. There's so many different gecko species to choose from. You might be able to keep some of your knobtail geckos in here as well, but you might need to upgrade later on, especially if they get a little larger. And then you also might be able to keep a pair of your barking geckos in here, which would also be a cool one. These ones especially are one of my actual favorites of gecko species, and I think they look super cool. Most of your actual sand gecko species are going to be able to stay in this low, which is awesome. And then if you do put them in the cube instead, then of course you've just got a bit more height to add a bit more decoration, but they don't necessarily need this height. Now you also might be able to keep one of the cooler species that we've mentioned in our top 5 beginner gecko species, and that is the Chinese cave gecko. These guys look super cool with their red eyes, and I think that would be an awesome addition to this tank. We are still kind of deciding on what we're putting in these tanks, but when we're searching online and we find that we don't really have any kind of information or resources, this is why we're making this series for you guys. So we are now going to be moving on to the 45 cube. Now of course this is 45 by 45 by 45, and this is kind of the big stepping point on terms of what you can actually keep in terms of reptiles. It gives you a lot more space and a lot more options to choose from. Now, searching online, we found that there was a lot of the similar stuff being recommended. You know, your obvious stuff, which I'm going to list in a minute, but there wasn't too much variation. So this is definitely something that like we want to kind of open people's eyes to and show that there is a few more options that you can put inside this tank that you can choose from, because I'm sure a lot of people have a 45, 45, 45 sitting around based on not knowing what to do with them, because it's not quite 60 and it's not quite, it's too big for some of the smaller species. So it's just kind of like that middle sector, but we kind of see it as a stepping point into the bigger tanks, and there is a lot that you can choose from and put inside here. So we're going to get on with some of the list of what you can put inside here. Now, everything we mentioned for the low can go in here, but of course you'll have extra height, so decoration or something along those lines, but it's not actually needed for the low ones, but you can put all the low ones in here as well. So we're going to start off with the actual one that I would recommend the most, that I think would be an awesome addition to a 45-45 cube if you've got one lying around. Now this is dart frogs. Thumbnail dart frogs would be an awesome addition, and there's loads of different species of dart frog that you can choose from. You've got your bumblebee dart frogs with the yellow and black, which look cool. You've got the Auratus dart frogs, which are the green and black ones, which I think look awesome. These are personally my favourite species of dart frog, because green is one of my favourite colours, so I think they would look cool in this tank. And you can also do a super cool bioactive setup in here as well for your dart frogs, maybe like a running waterfall or something. You've got a nice amount of space to build something cool. And then you've also got your Tinctorus species of dart frog as well, which these are kind of some of the dart frog species that we've recommended to put inside this tank because we think they have some awesome colours. And Tom has actually kept dart frogs in the past in one of these. Now, of course, we're not going to go too much into it, like I said before, but all arboreal tarantulas can go into this tank size. There's enough space for them to web up, and, you know, there's enough height for them. But I'll throw up a couple of other pictures of different species. With tarantulas, there's so many to choose from. We can't sit here all day and name all of them. but there are loads of cool different colours and different ones that you can choose. Moving on, next we've got frogs that you can put in here. Now there is actually quite a few to choose from. You've got stuff like your reed frogs, which would be awesome to see some kind of aquatic setup in this size tank. We don't see too many of them online, but it'd be definitely something cool that we could look into doing ourselves. Then you've also got stuff like the glass frog and the clown frog, which we have mentioned a couple of these in the past, but also some cool additions, and you can keep a nice little group in here. And not to forget the giraffe frog, and you can have a nice group of all of these different frog species in here because there is plenty of space. And I feel like some of the setup and like variety options you have for the setups, I think you can make some really cool tanks, and we definitely want to make some for you in the future and show you guys actually how to set them up, not only telling you what to put in here, showing you us putting them in here as well. Now, some of the ones that you might be able to keep a pair in here, but especially if you're getting more or it might not be big enough, especially if they grow to a bigger size, are some red-eyed tree frogs, which is definitely something we're going to be looking into getting in the future. You've got your monkey-legged frogs as well, and then you've got your maroon-eyed frogs. Now, we only recommend that you keep a pair in here because these can get quite large, and definitely you might want to look into upgrading a 60, but for the meantime, in a smaller size, they can happily live in this size tank. Now, moving on to our actual gecko species, there is a few that you can put in here. One of the biggest one, especially the one that we saw recommended online, like I just mentioned, was the crested geckos. Now, you can keep a juvenile or baby crested gecko in this tank happily until they grow up, and then you're going to want to upgrade the tank size, but until then, they can happily live in here. Especially the baby crested geckos, you can keep quite a few in here just because of their size. As you can see by the pictures, they are tiny. But yeah, they'd happily live in here, but you'll definitely want to upgrade it when they grow up. Some of the other geckos that are similar to the crested gecko, where you might want to upgrade it in the future, but will happily live towards the baby or the juvenile, is the mossy gecko and, of course, the gargoyle gecko. A couple awesome choices and very similar to the crested gecko, but these guys look awesome, as you can see by these pictures, especially the mossy one I think looks awesome, and natural camouflage is always a cool thing. You've also got stuff like your chameleon geckos, which you could also keep in here. Another one that looks super cool with natural camouflage. This would be an awesome species to put in here, and I think it's one of the ones that not a lot of people actually know about, especially like me, learning about all the reptiles and Tom teaching me about some of the new species. This is definitely one I hadn't heard of before, but I think they look super cool and would be a great addition into this tank. Next up is one of my personal favourite species of geckos, definitely in the top 5, is the golden-tailed gecko. The stripe down the back of these just look awesome, especially with their eyes as well, and they have an awesome colour pattern on their back, which kind of like highlights the golden as well along their tail. These guys are awesome, and you'd be able to keep them in here as well. Now, some other top choices for this tank in terms of geckos would be your bi-nose geckos and some smaller species of day gecko. Day geckos are definitely one that we have been kind of tipping back and forth on if we're wanting to actually purchase some, but it does look like we might be getting some in the future. Maybe some of the larger species, but the smaller species you'd happily keep in here and would be an awesome addition to your collection. So we're coming towards the end of this episode of what to put in your spare tank. We hope you guys are enjoying this series. As we said, this is not a intense list of everything you can actually put inside these tanks, more just some suggestions from us here at Predatory Exotics. But we hope you guys have enjoyed, as this is kind of like the first stepping stone into some of the bigger tanks. So next week's episode, we're going to have a bigger tank, and it's going to be even more options of stuff that you can keep in them. So if you guys have any suggestions of what else you could put in here that maybe we didn't mention in this video, don't forget to leave it down in the comment section below. But if you have enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any more of Predatory Exotics videos in the future. Especially, we've got some big ones coming up soon, a lot of stuff in the works, so hopefully you'll stick around for that. And we can bring more and more content to you guys. But we hope you guys are enjoying this series. It seems like you are with some of the feedback that we've been getting. Let us know if you're going to be adding anything we mentioned today into your collection. And you can send us a picture. You can send us a picture on Instagram. If you head over to our Instagram, we really appreciate all of the support that you've been giving on there, so don't forget to leave a follow on there. But you can actually send us pictures on there. We love seeing your setups, we love seeing your tanks. We've had a few people send us stuff, which is awesome. But without further ado, I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye guys.